Good morning. There's always a moment when you're coming up here and you're like, oh no. Do you get that before you come up? There's always the holy kind of angst that just is always part of being up here. Oh no. And then you're mindful of the fact that you should be, oh no, and because God says, oh yes, I've got this and I'll lead you through it. Last week, what a great intro. Last week, Pastor Ferris led us through 3 postures. And she reminded us that we are called as God's people to have a posture of, the final one was the posture of service. Covenant Life Church has had no problem with the posture of service. This church began on a posture of service to serve its community. In order to do so, Covenant Life Church has done things a little differently in order to serve its community and take that posture of service. We were one of the first churches in the whole denomination that had no evening service. In the 80s, I believe. That was unheard of in the 80s. And so we gathered together in small groups in the evening on Sunday in order to build community and in order to serve our community as well. We're also a church that started with women in office. It was unheard of in those days in the Christian Reformed Church. And so we did it so that each person could move in the direction of Jesus Christ and take a step in the direction of learning more about who Jesus is. Another thing we did differently about 15 or so years ago is we decided to leave the building on Sunday and worship outside of the building and serve the community and get to know the community so that they could see us shining and they'd want more of what they actually see shining around us. Back then, we called it Day to Shine. We moved after a few years with Day to Shine into Be a Neighbor. We've changed some of the different names and some of the things that we've been part of, but Day to Shine, if you ever wore a t-shirt or you were ever part of Day to Shine or Be a Neighbor, would you just stand for 3.5 seconds so that we can say thank you for... Let's see how many people have been part of Day to Shine or Be a Neighbor. Look at that. That's massive. Let's thank them. You can be seated. Only this side clapped. What's that? You guys are thankful. Apparently you guys aren't on this side, so whatever. You can email me later at marshallh@ghclc.org. We've had a posture of service since the first day. That's who we are. That's what we believe is important, is being those who have a posture of serving one another. And it wasn't just to be a day to shine. It was a springboard so that all throughout the year, we look for those who need service. And we serve those that we see, and we have eyes to see those who are in need of us serving them. The goal wasn't just to serve. The goal, like the sign says, the goal was to help each other take the next step in our relationship with Jesus Christ. That's the goal. It wasn't to say, look at me and look at how I can spread mulch. Anybody can spread mulch. Anybody can. But the goal was for them to see Jesus and want more of Jesus. That's the goal of Shine 365, of Day to Shine, of Be a Neighbor. And if I'm honest, sometimes the next step is the first step. How beautiful it is when you're serving in community and you see somebody take the first step for the first time ever. For some people, the next step is the first step, and that's why we've been doing things differently, because we want people to take the first step in their relationship with Jesus Christ, and maybe it's the next step, depending on where they are in that relationship. So Day to Shine has looked different over the years. We've sang at local retirement facilities. I don't know if you've sang at a retirement facility. We've spreaded mulch in the community. And I have a whole host of old pictures, but I'm not going to show them. But we've spreaded mulch in different facilities around the community. We've raked at the beach. We've raked at schools. We've raked at homes. We've done prayer walks throughout the community, praying that people would come to know Jesus and that they would understand that he is the light. But over the last few years, the number of people participating and signing up has become less and less and less, and then COVID. So we tried to pivot. We tried to change things, and as COVID kind of waned and as we opened services back up again, we saw more and more people worshiping, but on Day to Shine, we had 95 people sign up. So we canceled services for 600 and had 95 people show up to serve. And so we're trying something different. That's our history. And so I know you mourn the loss of what was, but we're seeking something new and hoping that God brings something different into our midst as we think about shining 365 and shining all year long, actually. So Fred Vanderploeg at the end of the service is going to tell us more about how we're going to do that. But let's take a look at Jesus as he reminds us that we're called to shine by turning in the Bibles that we have or the devices to Matthew 5. So let's turn together to Matthew 5. We're going to look at just 3 verses. And I have no doubt the scripture passage has been used over the years for Day to Shine. But maybe Jesus will remind us of something again this morning as we consider what it means to shine. So Matthew 5, we're just going to look at verses 14 through 16. And in honor of God's word, I'd like to invite you to stand for the reading of the word. Here's what we're going to do. When we see the word light, I'm not going to read it. You're going to read it. So you're going to say the word light when we get to it, okay? Is that okay? Okay, wow. Okay, verse 14, you are the of the world. A town or a city built on a hill, it cannot be hidden. And so neither do people a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This is the word of our Lord. You may be seated at this time. So in verse 14, it's interesting, at least I find, that Jesus begins by saying, you are. You know, sometimes as his people, we say, well, I'm going to shine. I want to shine brighter. I hope to shine. And Jesus says, no. You already are the light. Well, I messed up, and I've got a past, I've got a history, he wouldn't want to use me. He already knows that. Well, I'm going to wait to shine until I'm better. No, you're not. You're going to shine now. Well, I'm not perfect. I know, because only Jesus is, God says. I want you to shine now. The light that emanates from the cracks in your pot, because we're all cracked pots, the light that shines through the pot is brighter than the light that doesn't come through it. And so Jesus says, I know that you're all messed up, but I'm calling you to shine anyways. I'm calling you to shine anyways. It happens in the way that you talk to people. Bless you. Are you shining when you talk to people? It happens in the way that you look at people. It happens in the way that you respond to people. It happens in the way that you don't respond. When you see somebody that's familiar at the store and you think, I'm just going to look down. Stop it. You're not allowed to look down anymore. If you're a light, Jesus says you are the light. You're not a halogen with a dimmer. You're a bright light that's bright all the time. You don't get to choose when to be a light. You are a light. And I know there are tough days. I know that you're moving through mire. I know you got a lot on your plate. You don't get to choose whether to shine or not. You are a light. You are a light. You are a light, Jesus says. And so he's not mincing any words. You are a light. And we used to sing that song, this little light of mine. He sings too. I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Don't let Satan. He can't blow it out. He's not going to blow it out because Jesus initiated it. So here's the question. Are you blowing out your own light? Is there something that you're doing that's dimming the light today and you're like, I don't really want to. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not in the mood. I don't feel like. And so I don't know that he has the capacity to extinguish Jesus in us if Jesus is the light. I think we blow out the light. I think we're the ones who dampen it, we dim it, however you want to finish it. And so simple application. What are some of the ways that you're dimming the light of Jesus that's in you today? Doubt. There's no way God would use me. Shame. What? You're calling me to be a pastor? Do you know my history? Do you know you're calling me to play this instrument in church, but I'm not perfect. I know. We're all cracked pots, and we're all called to be lights that shine. He's going to shine through you regardless, and he wants to use you despite yourself. How beautiful it is that he wants to continue to use us. I think we have opportunities all around us to shine, but I think sometimes we are just too busy. And I think we miss those opportunities because we're moving so fast. Here's an opportunity or a story of one opportunity that I read that I think fits well. This gentleman says, one day when I was a freshman in high school, I saw a kid from my class who was walking home from school, and his name was Kyle. He looked like he was carrying all of his books, and I thought to myself, why would anyone bring home all of his books on Friday? He must be a nerd. Kind of dates the story, I guess. I had quite a weekend, parties and football games with friends tomorrow afternoon planned, so I shrugged my shoulders and I went on. As I was walking, I saw a bunch of kids running towards him, and they ran at him, knocking all of his books out of his arms and tripping him so he landed in the dirt. His glasses went flying, and I saw them land in the grass about 10 feet from him. He looked up, and I saw this terrible sadness in his eyes. My heart went out to him, and so I jogged over to him as he crawled around looking for his glasses, and I saw a tear in his eye. As I handed him his glasses, I said, "Those guys, they're not very nice. They really should get lives," I said. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, thanks a lot." There was a big smile on his face, and it was one of those smiles that showed real gratitude. And so I helped him pick up his books and asked him where he lived. As it turned out, he lived right nearby me. And so I asked him why I had never seen him before, and he said he had gone to private school before. I would have never hung out with a private school kid before. We talked all the way home. I carried some of his books, and he turned out to be a pretty cool kid. I asked him if he wanted to play a little football with my friends, and he said yes. So we hung out all weekend, and the more I got to know Kyle, the more I liked him, and my friends thought the same of him. Monday morning came, and there was Kyle with a huge stack of books again. And I stopped at him and said, "Boy, you are going to really build some serious muscle with a pile of books every day." He just laughed and handed me half his books. Over the next 4 years, Kyle and I became best friends, and when we were seniors, we began to think about college. Kyle decided on Georgetown, and I was going to Duke. I knew that we would always be friends, that the miles would never be a problem. He was going to be a doctor, and I was going for business on a football scholarship. Kyle was valedictorian of our class, and I teased him all the time about being such a nerd. He had prepared a speech for graduation, and I was so glad it wasn't me having to give that speech up there. Graduation day came, and I saw Kyle, and he looked great. He was one of those guys that really found himself in high school. He filled out and actually looked good in glasses. He had more dates than I had, and all the girls loved him. Boy, sometimes I was jealous of Kyle. Today was one of those days. I could see that he was nervous about his speech, and so I smacked him on the back and said, "Hey, big guy, you'll be great." He looked at me with one of those eyes, the really grateful ones, and smiled and said, "Thanks. Thank you so much." As he started his speech, he cleared his throat and began. Graduation is a time to thank those who helped you make it through those tough years. Your parents, your teachers, your siblings, maybe a coach, but mostly your friends. I'm here to tell you that being a friend to somebody when there's an opportunity is the best gift that you can give them. So I want to tell you a story, Kyle said. I just looked at my friend with disbelief as he told the first day we met. Kyle had planned to kill himself over the weekend. He talked of how he had cleaned out his locker so that his mom wouldn't have to do it later and was carrying his stuff home that day. He looked hard at me and gave me a smile, and thankfully, I was saved, he said. My friend saved me from doing the unspeakable. I heard the gasp go through the crowd as this handsome, popular boy told us all about his weakest moment. I saw his mom and his dad looking at me and smiling the same grateful smile. Not until that moment did I realize the depth of my kindness. Never underestimate the power of your actions when opportunities present themselves. With one small gesture, you can change a person's life for better or for worse. You see, God puts us all in each other's lives to impact one another in some way. Look for the opportunity and look for God in others, this writer says. Opportunities are all around us. They're all around us. We just have to be willing to shine and to see them. Don't let Satan blow it out. Oh, I don't think he's the one who blows it out. I think we do. I think we blow it out when opportunities present themselves to shine all year long. Now, it's interesting to me that if we look back at this story again, if you have your Bibles open, how many times did you say the word light together? 4 times you said the word light. It's interesting to me that in this passage, in the 3 verses, 14, 15, and 16, that Jesus finds it necessary to actually use 3 different words for light. So in 4 verses, he uses 3 totally different words. Why does he do that? Well, it's important for us to understand why he uses different words in one simple story. So first of all, in verse 14, he uses the word phos. You are the light. You are the phos. And really what phos stands is for bonfire. It's a massive bonfire. Where could only one stick cause a bonfire? No, it's a heap. And so you and I together, Jesus says, you are a bonfire for Grand Haven. You together all make this massive fire that's going to illuminate. It's kind of like a charcoal grill, which nobody seems to use anymore because we all use gas grills. How many of you use a charcoal grill? A bunch of you do, right? Nostalgic. Dan, do you keep all the rocks split, or do they all come together? They all come together at the beginning, right? And then he spreads them out because he's got tactics and skills that I don't have. But you have to start with them together. That's what we do. Dan, that's even better. Thank you. We start together, and then we spread out. We come back together again, and then we spread out again, just as phos, just as the light does that Jesus talks about. So when he says you are a light, he's saying you're a bonfire. Verse 14, he continues. Jesus says a town built on a city or on a hill, a city built on a hill, he says, cannot be hidden. Imagine trying to hide Grand Haven during Coast Guard Festival. Can you imagine putting a bowl on top of it? Or imagine if we went up to the musical fountain and Jerry Troke, who's the chairman, is he here somewhere? He'll be in the second service maybe. Imagine if we went and extinguished the whole musical fountain and all the lights that were there, what Jerry would be thinking. He's a member of our church and he's the chairman for the musical fountain, I think. Can you imagine if we were able to extinguish the whole fountain and all the light that it shines? Or even better yet, here's a town in Israel. It's on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, known as Tiberias. Anytime you're on the Sea of Galilee, you know exactly where you're at, because if you see Tiberias, it's on your western side. But Jesus is speaking of these towns. He's speaking of maybe Jerusalem when he says a city on a hill, which it's interesting because Jerusalem is lower, but there's 2 valleys between, which make it higher between the 2 valleys. Now, the interesting thing is that in Jesus' day, there was no electricity. So what is he referring to when he refers to the light? You are the light. He's not referring to electricity. He's not even referring to candles that we know of. He's referring to you. So when people see Grand Haven, do they see the light? When they see your house, your family, do they see the light of Jesus? Well, now in verse 15, he says, no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl. And he uses a second word. Why does he do this? He uses the word kaio. Kaio he uses, which really is the process of being on fire. It's an eternal fire, one that never goes out. So those who are on fire should never be extinguished. And he uses this interesting term. He says, no one ever puts it under a bowl. And in some of the older versions, actually it uses, and so does the song, hide it under a bushel. And so as a kid, I always thought, well, a bushel is just a bunch of bushes. No, it's a bushel basket. It's actually a measurement in Jesus' day. So if you filled 1 bushel basket, the basket is useful for measuring. And so Jesus is saying, don't take what's useful and extinguish what's useful. Don't take your gifting and what God has given to you and extinguish what he already has given to you to actually use out in the community. It's useful. So I guess the question is, what are you useful for? Do you know what your talents are? Do you know what your gifts are? Do you know how God has wired you so that you can serve those who are in need? Well, in our membership class, we often show this link, and I can give it to you later if you want it, but it's a spiritual gift survey that can help you understand how God has wired you. It's free if you go to Faith Alive Resources, but I'd love for you to download that, take a look, and see what your current gifts are and see how God has blessed you so that you know how to serve him better. Verse 15, Jesus says, instead, they put it on a stand. It gives light to everyone in the house. They take the light and they put it on a stand. Now, there's a rabbinical town in Jesus' area in Galilee that looks a little bit like this. It's a restored, remodeled town. I think I've shown you this picture before. I'm actually sitting on the ladder in the upper room, doing a little teaching on the upper room, and I'm the friend who was lowered down through the ceiling. But what do you see on the side of the wall? It's a light. It's a lamp. The stand isn't something in Jesus' day that's just moved into the middle of the room. It's built into the house. It's part of the house, like your light switches. Do you have a light switch that's just dangling on the ground, or is it part of the building? And so in Jesus' day, they put it on a stand. Next picture, please. It's on the wall. So it's built into, the home is built with the understanding that light is going to be given to all those who are in the home, Jesus says, which is the same word he uses in John 14 when he says, in my Father's house are many rooms. It's all lit. Well, Jesus gives us a third use of the word light. He says it in verse 15. He says, instead they put it on a stand and it gives light. Now he uses the word lampo. Does that sound like anything we use in our homes? Lampo? Huh. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives lampo, which really means the word bright. They put it on a stand and it's bright to everybody in the house. When I think of brightness in God's house, I think of Debbie Mellema. I think of her wearing the lanyard on the frontline team as people make their way into church, and she welcomes those into the house so that they can experience the light of God. That was one of her gifts, was hospitality. And I wonder if you have that gift. Our hospitality, our frontline team could use more people. Have you ever walked in a church and no one greeted you? Have you ever had that happen to you or walked into a place? We've all had that before, and every now and then we'll get a call, hey, nobody said hi to me. I'm like, was somebody at the door? Yeah, but nobody said hi to me. I'm like, what? Doesn't make sense. But we need people at the doors. We need people who can greet and welcome those of us who come into this house. Finally, in verse 16, Jesus says, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Jesus uses the word light again a fourth time, but guess which word he uses? If we can go to the next one. He uses the same word he used in the beginning. It's a chiastic structure, we call it, where it starts this way and moves its way and echoes back. And so he's actually saying in that passage, let your bonfire, the first word we had in the beginning, let your bonfire shine before others that they may see your good deeds and they may glorify your Father in heaven. It's so interesting that Jesus says when others see you, they won't see you, but they'll see me. Day to shine. Be a neighbor. Shine 365. It's all about pointing to him like a bonfire every day of the year. It can be done anywhere. It can be done at any time. It can be done at all times. The opportunity to shine around us is something that we can't miss. And so I'd like to invite my good friend Fred Vanderplug to join me up on stage, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about Shine 365 and the opportunity that we have before us.
Well, good morning. And thanks for joining us and being part of the kickoff Sunday for Shine 365. Now, Shine 365 in years past, as Marshall said, was really a one-day event. We'd go out into the community, we'd do projects, we'd start with a service at the beginning, and we'd spread all out through the community. But it was one day. As we've been talking about Shine 365 coming out of the post-pandemic era, it was decided that we would take 365 and make it a year-long event. Now, Shine is a year-long event where we get the opportunity to shine not only to those in our church, but also throughout our community. It really is about creating a lifestyle. See, Shine 365 truly is about being our brother's keeper. It is about letting our light shine. Shine 365 is more than just coming to church. Shine 365 is about being church to those that attend Covenant Life Church and those who live in our community. So how does Shine 365 work? How is this different from years past? You might have noticed as you came in, the bushel baskets that you passed, the baskets up here, the basket Marshall held up to you. And we're going to be using those buckets for two things today. Now, as we begin passing these buckets to the different sections, we're going to ask you to pass the buckets from the front to the back. Now, this is kind of like a reverse offering. Usually when we pass a plate, the collection plate, or we pass a basket, we ask you to put something into it. Go ahead and start passing them out now. What we're going to do is we're going to ask you to take something out of that bucket. In that bucket, you're going to find a card. We're going to ask you just to take that card, hang on to it for a little while. But on the first thing that we're doing with the bucket is just reaching in and taking out a card. Now, they're all the same, so you don't have to look in the bucket and pick out a different card. They are all the same. The second use for the bushel baskets is that we're going to use them at the end of the service. When you walk out of the church, there are going to be people out back holding bushel baskets. And after you've had time a little bit later on to fill out the card, we're going to ask you to put that filled out card in one of the baskets. Now, if you choose to take that card home with you and fill it out later, that is okay. There will be baskets sitting at the Welcome Center on the counter every day from today going forward. So as you look at that card, what are we asking you to do with the card? First, on the front side, we're asking you to put your name on it. We're also asking you to tell us how to get in touch with you so that when we do need something from you, when we do want to ask you to help, we have the best way to contact you. Now, that's pretty self-explanatory. That is the front of the card. Hang on to it yet. Don't start filling it out yet. We'll give you time in a few minutes to do that. Now, the back side of the card, that is something that gets a little more tricky. That is something that we're going to ask you to think about, maybe even pray about a little bit. And if you are old enough, like me, to remember back to 1961, on January 20th, John F. Kennedy, when he gave his inaugural speech, said some pretty neat words that have been repeated many, many times. Those words are, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Now today, Shine 365, we're going to change that just a little bit. We are going to ask you, what can your church do for you and for your community? Now in a couple weeks, we're going to come back and we're going to have another card. And that card, we're going to ask you to tell us, what can the church do for you? And for you to give us some ideas of what we as a church and you as an individual can do in the community. Some of those things that we're going to do will look like what we did on years ago on Day to Shine. We will go into the community. We will do raking projects. We're going to be planting trees. We're going to be doing some painting, maybe washing some windows. But into the community also, we're going to do some new things. As you might be aware, it gets fairly busy here in Grand Haven on the 4th of July night when they shoot fireworks. It also gets very busy here during Coast Guard Festival. Well, we don't know if it's going to be hot or cold on that day, but we're going to have a welcome center here in the church. And if it's hot, you can come inside and cool off. If it's cool outside, well, people can come inside church and warm up. We're going to have a welcome center where maybe you've been doing a lot of walking around and you have a blister. We're going to have Band-Aids for you. Maybe it is a bright and sunny day, and guess what? You forgot the sunscreen. We're going to have sunscreen for you. We're just going to open the church up, have staff and volunteers here welcoming people into our community and into our church. We're going to do other things. We're going to go at the holidays into the retirement communities and sing songs. We're going to go there at different times during the year and ask you to play dominoes. Now, one thing I want to let you know, if you go to a retirement community and play dominoes, forget the rules that you know. Now, they make up their own rules. And please, let them win the game. Okay? See, you all have skills, talents, and gifts that you might not realize that many others here in Covenant Life Church and in the community can use. So on the back of that card, we are asking you to list one, just one skill or one talent or one gift that you are willing to share. Now, if you're struggling to write something down, I have a kind of suggestion for you. If this was a TV program, I'd turn around and say, and the answer is time. Yeah, think about it. Time is one of the most valuable gifts that you can give. You see, once you have given time, it's gone. It can't be gotten back. That makes time one of the most valuable gifts that anyone can give. Now, we pray we all have more time, yet once we used it, it is gone. And that's what makes it so valuable. Time is not replaceable. So, what might be a good way to use your time? Well, possibly to simply sit and listen. Maybe it's time to pray for and pray with someone. Maybe it's time to rake or mow or shovel. Maybe time to celebrate a special occasion. Or maybe it's time to mourn and just sit with someone in silence. Time is something that we all have. And what is very unique is God has given us ability to use our time how we see fit. Yet beyond time, there are other ways we can help others at Covenant Life and in the community. Wherever you're at in your life, whatever you find yourself doing, wanting to do, you still have gifts and talents at whatever age you're at that others in our church and in our community can use. Now, you might have to go a little bit outside your comfort zone to try something for the first time. See what I'm doing right now, standing in front of you with a microphone in my hand, and it's a little outside of my comfort zone. It's not something I look forward to doing, although I do look forward to talking to you today about Shine 365. See, when asked, Bev and Lori, we asked them to head up a ministry here at our church and to teach in that ministry. And they were a little hesitant. They weren't real sure that they felt they had the skills or the talent. But you know what? They went outside of their comfort zone. And today, those two ladies head up our grief share and our divorce care ministries. Well, then there's Ben. Ben has a very sick mother. We pray for Ben's mother many times on Sunday mornings here in church. And Ben spends much of his day and night taking care of his mother at home. Yet when we start talking about something in the special needs ministry that we need some volunteers, Ben's the first one that comes up and says to me, hey, what time do you need me and where do you need me? And that's going outside his comfort zone because many times Ben has only had 1 or 2 hours of sleep at night. There's Doug. Doug's sitting right here. And Doug cannot hear what I am saying. He cannot hear the words of the songs when we sing. Doug is looking at his phone. Doug has an app on his phone that hears what is being said and translates it into words. And so Doug is sitting here reading what is happening. But that hasn't stopped Doug from getting involved in the bunk bed ministry. It hasn't stopped Doug from when we need a little help around here, cleaning or doing some of the odd jobs. Who's standing outside the door before we get here to open the doors? Doug. Doug's been coming here for about 10 weeks. And to some of us in the men's ministry and some of us just who are here at church, Doug has become one of the biggest forms of inspiration that we can have. You talk about going outside your comfort zone, plug your ears and see how the world is different, but you're willing to get out there and do it. Well, then there's my good friend Adam. Adam, raise your hand back there. There you go. In the back is Adam. See, Adam loves to sing. And he loves to sing often and real loud. And so Adam came to me and said, hey, what can I do around the church? I have a lot of extra time. How can I help? Now, I want you all to put your head down a minute and look at the floor. That floor is spotless. When you came in this morning, you walked in on squeaky clean floors. Well, that's because Adam comes here 2 days a week, and Adam runs the mopping machine. Now, we've challenged Adam, can you sing louder than that mopping machine as you're going around here? And you know what? He can. No problems with it. And then there's Heather. You've probably seen Heather over the last number of months. She's the young lady in the wheelchair at the back, often out in the area just behind the auditorium. Now, when you leave today, there's a good chance Heather will be back there with a bushel basket sitting on the tray on her wheelchair. Heather is also one that quietly, we've had some luncheons here at church the last month, and Heather is here quietly rolling around between the tables, cleaning up the tables and sticking around and helping put everything away after the service. She also serves as an extra set of eyes in the security area on Sundays. And so that's just some examples of things that are being done. Now, there are many of you who are already volunteering your time and your services. Just to give you an example, some of those. Maybe you're volunteering your time to make those gift tags that we hang on the giving tree in the fall. Maybe you are already teaching special needs ministries, or you're teaching in one of our children or youth ministries. Maybe you're one of those that quietly and unbeknownst drive people to and from the church, take them to doctor appointments, or bring them to and home from the grocery store. Well, Marshall had you stand up if you worked in Day to Shine years ago. But maybe you could all raise your hand if you've ever had a cup of coffee here at our church. Raise your hand if you, yeah, a bunch of hands going up. Guess what? Somebody volunteers to make that coffee. Marshall referenced being a greeter. Our goal is that every Sunday when you come in here, there's a smiling face at the door to welcome you. That's somebody volunteering their time to serve. Maybe you're one of those that quietly counsels other people here at church, people that have come to us seeking help and guidance. There's a whole group that helps make bunk beds. And those bunk beds go all over West Michigan. Maybe you're one of the people that on a snowy Sunday morning in the winter, get up and get in your truck and go plow some driveways so others here at the church can drive their car here. Maybe you're one that spends a lot of time practicing, so we have an awesome praise team every Sunday morning. Well, I could stand up here for a long time. The list is endless of what people already do and volunteer here. But so are the talents, the gifts, and the skills that you have. Those are God-given talents, gifts, and skills. In just a minute, we're going to take a few minutes and let you fill out the cards. The front is pretty easy, name and a way to contact you. And at the end of the service, we're going to let you put those cards in a bushel basket out back. Once we get the cards in the care ministry, we are going to categorize all those skills that you have told us that you have. And when a need arises, we are going to reach out to you to see if you can help. Now, what happens on the day we call or ask you to do something? You are busy. I'm going to teach you a word. All you have to do is say, pass. That's all you have to say. No explanation. I just have to pass. We will simply go to the next name on the list and reach out to them. Your name's going to stay in the same spot on the rotation, and the next time we need something, we're going to reach back out to you again. Now, we're going to take a few minutes to fill out the cards. If you take also time to watch the monitors up here, we're going to be playing a video that also helps you to look at different opportunities where you can serve here at Covenant Life Church. Thanks. Thank you to all of you, all who are serving, all who have served, all of you who are going to be willing to try going outside of your comfort zone and participate in Shine 365. Thank you.
Your truth is so much more. This is how I know I'm secure. That even though I keep falling, your love for me endures. In the light of your grace, you end my darkness. In the light of your grace, my burdens lose their weight.
By being a good friend. Helping mom with